King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
We're off and running with another episode of The Broadcasters Podcast, episode 166. This week, we see more failures and more of the decline of the what I call the establishment media side of the mainstream. Okay? Because the Grammys took a big hit in terms of audience. Earlier this year, the Golden Globes took a hit in audience. So the accustomed, forced down our throats, mainstream entertainment that we've been accustomed to is failing. Okay? It's all part of our media, and it is failing. It's going in a bad spot. So we're going to go through a couple of stories about that have been focused. It's not good. Again, Golden Globes fell 64% to a 13-year low. And honestly, this has nothing to do with the pandemic. People can go ahead and say, oh, well, we don't have the audience there. We don't have the camaraderie. We don't have the red carpet. Really? Is that what we really think is the problem? Is that, obviously we saw, people in the gowns, the women in the gowns, we saw people, whatever. But again, when you take that all away, some of that just only really matters about, oh, look at how she's dressed up, look how she looks, right? Or he looks. Sometimes it's just about that. And, let's see what awards come up. And it's just kind of a little bit backroom fodder. But that's about it. So Golden Globes, which normally does very well, 6.9 million viewers. When Ricky Gervais was running that show, probably double that. And so that show's gone away. And the Golden Globe and the Grammys, we're going to probably feel the same kind of feel. And again, this happens across all these mainstream events. The only thing that has not been overly, that has gotten of a major award show event that has not been picked up in the same vein is the Super Bowl. Super Bowl actually still, it might have gone down in viewers, but it still wasn't, it didn't completely go and fall apart. I don't think it did. But here's what we got. So again, going back a couple weeks ago, Golden Globes, 64% drop from the previous year, and 18.4 million fans watched live the 2020 Golden Globes. Wow. It brought the lowest viewership of any Golden Globe since NBC began broadcasting in 1996. Then there was the 65th annual Golden Globes. Forget which one this one is, but one in 1996. That one was affected by the Writers Guild strike in 2008. And it was aired as a news conference. It still brought in 6 million viewers. American Music Awards last November, 50% down, 43% in total viewers, 3.8 million viewers total. Now, as for the Super Bowl, that actually pulled 91.6 million television watchers. And the year before, it pulled 100 million viewers. Well, that might have caused that, but again, they said it was the first time the Super Bowl actually generated beneath 100 million television viewers. And that the Super Bowl 50 viewership stats accounted for out-of-home viewing, but did not contribute to the digital TV ratings because people could watch it online much more, and Nielsen didn't have that information for that. So you can counteract what happened there. But again, people are watching the show live. It's not necessarily streamed because of how the academies for the respective music and movies cultures are usually not done that way. So again, the Grammys felt the same effect and got slammed. Let's go into that story because that's the most current thing. And again, I don't talk about the Grammys much, but you know what? They need to be criticized. Because of the fact that we already know that there's a rig by the Recording Academy because of how they do this, right? Because you know that the pulse of the music community is not contributed here. It doesn't happen. The wrong songs, the wrong artists normally get the votes. But again, that's because there's an establishment among the peers in the music industry that determine who puts out the record of the year, the album of the year, pop vocal, all of that. It's an antiquated format. It does not represent. So when it's not a real-time of the people format, nobody's caring. The Golden Globes, the Hollywood Foreign Press, no. But again, the Golden Globes got hurt because there were no new movies necessarily to talk about or to be seen in the theaters. So the theaters did affect it, and it'll probably have a rebound next year. But again, we don't know how much of it will be. So the Grammy audience went to a new low. Now, they tried to put a ceremony that didn't need to rely on Zoom. Again, the one show, if I remember, that actually did well in this format, I want to say the MTV Music Awards did very well. And I'm trying to remember how well they did. And if I'm right, I think they actually did pretty well. Well, it still dropped a little bit, but it wasn't anywhere close like it was with these other shows. Not 60 and 40%. It dropped 5%. But again, that's the normal kind of decline of cable viewers anyway. But again, 6.4 million viewers for the 2020 MTV VMAs, which I did watch, 2-hour show. Very well done. Thought it was really good. I thought Keke Palmer did a very good job of hosting. Trevor Noah hosting the Grammys. Now, yes, people will watch the Grammys, but they will probably only watch the performances, which they can find somewhere after the fact. So you have to watch the actual show? No. So the Grammy Awards fell to 8.8 million viewers, according to Nielsen. It's a new low, 53% drop compared to last year, which had 18.7 million viewers. And that's the least amount since 2006. Viewership for all live events has plummeted as people have seemed less enthusiastic about watching 3-hour events packed with commercial breaks. Well, can't say so much about Super Bowl. Again, that's still 90 million viewers with a digital audience. So again, they're trying to pair the Super Bowl because they're trying to go ahead and cover the tracks of how poor some of this contrived, oh, look at this big media, right? Big movies, big music, the corporatization, being heralded and praised in front of all, as while all us peons, content creators, online, digital, in the ghetto, if you will, they're all being looked down on by the Taylor Swifts and the Beyoncés of the world and the Jay-Z's and the, think about it. That's what we got. So anyway, unlike the Golden Globes and the most recent Emmy Awards broadcasts, they tried to avoid the use of Zoom to power the ceremony. And it did not lack in star power. Featured performances were by Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, Megan Thee Stallion, and Cardi B. Megan and Cardi obviously putting a lot of people to talk about the WAP performance, which was very controversial. And, of course, very sexy. And, obviously people had comments about that. That, again, the first time they performed together, this song and all the controversy that came from it, and I've talked about this on my When I'm Not Podcasting series about it. It went 3.5 hours. It drew praise for its production, a mix of live performances and a small ceremony in an open-air tent outside the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles. Trevor Noah getting warm reviews. But then we have what's coming up soon, the Oscars, which will be coming up April 25th. And the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and their broadcaster ABC, they're worried about the Oscars. Because they're, again, where the Golden Globes got hurt is that this is basically probably the last bastion right now of celebrities trying to hold on to their fame or hold on to the size of fandom that they had. It is quickly dwindling. And for the Oscars, they need to go and pull all stops. They need to make sure every celebrity is on board and on site. Whatever they have to do. They're going to have to try to pull off a show like they normally do. I don't even know what they're going to do because the movies that they have, there's not that many because many they got pulled back or they got online that people didn't get to watch. So when a lot of people haven't had a chance to watch some of these movies that are going to be featured as Oscar-nominated features for your consideration, they're not going to know who these are. So there's going to be less interest in this. And all of a sudden, we're going to see some of these celebrities, like it's kind of almost like, oh, this is kind of weird. We haven't seen this person in a long time. And that's what's going to happen. So what are they going to do? Again, the audience that you would normally try to get for this, they've been watching Netflix and watching streaming for the last year. They haven't gone to the movies. They haven't gone to see these Oscar-nominated films. And there's no way for them to find out which movies are Oscar-nominated that would be fit into the role. They didn't have the small theaters that are out there, the boutique theaters that are able to go and run these movies. And the people that just were not probably in the movie sense to watch new movies. Probably not so much because of the premium price. And some of these said indie movies you know, I mean, you tell me, probably kind of hard to go and watch who the Emmys were doing this year, or the Academy Awards. I don't know. And I can't tell you who is being nominated of who they have right now, the nominations. But they put it out there. And here's what we got in terms of the Oscars. This is what they have to do. They are nervous. This is a couple days ago on Deadline.com. Very interesting story. They're taking shape with the Oscars and how it needs to be presented. And here is some background on what they're going to have to do. Oscar show producers are Steven Soderbergh, Stacey Sher, and Jesse Collins. They sent a letter to all nominees about how the scaled-down ceremony at downtown LA's Union Station will look and feel like, laying down rules for the nominees as well. So the 93rd Annual Academy Awards will not have any Zoom-like content at all, unlike the majority of other pandemic-affected awards we've seen as of late. In other words, you either show up in person or the Academy will accept your Oscar on your behalf, as always. Quote, for those of you unable to attend because of scheduling or continued uneasiness about traveling, we want you to know that there will not be an option to Zoom in for the show. Good. You want to save this industry? You want to keep the illusion of Hollywood alive? You need to pull off a stellar Oscar show. All the pomp and circumstance, all the outfits and the fashion on top of the game. No masks on red carpet, by the way. They better not do that. If they do that, that's going to hurt them. Now, I'm not saying anything about not being protected and social distancing and, proper protection. I get that part, but still, you have to keep in mind that people do not want to see that on their television. They do not want to see their celebrities in masks. They do not want to see their celebrities in some kind of a pod, if you will, or inside their lush mansions on Zoom, looking kind of, kvetched. Like they could be, who was it that was on? I forget which actor that went on and accepted an award in just like regular clothes, just street clothes. It just didn't look good. You have to have the best. That's again, the dress to the nines. That has to happen. Now, the producers also said, quote, we are going to great lengths to provide a safe and enjoyable evening for all of you in person, as well as for all the millions of film fans around the world, and we feel the virtual thing will diminish those efforts. Well, that's the first thing they need to do. And honestly, to hear people in the movie business come in and just start praising, thank my producer, my agent, there's going to have to be some humbleness by these celebrities accepting these awards. They need to be talking directly to the people, the everyday public. They need to go and start acting humble to their fans that pay the tickets, that go to see their events, that will come back to the theaters very soon to see their movies. They better step it up. If they want to keep the content that they have, the money that's coming into them, they expect that to keep coming in. After all that's going on, remember, you have a lot of these corporate companies that own movie theaters or movie studios that are looking to go and put their content on digital. And you know what happens when they go on digital? Most likely, the celebrities, the actors, the actresses will get paid less. So, no Jason Sudeikis hoodies. That's who it was. Okay, here's what they said now as well. Tips on dress code. Saying the usual formal look is fine, but please don't go casual. Quote, we're aiming for a fusion of inspirational and aspirational, which in actual words means formal is totally cool if you want to go there, but casual is really not. They need to understand this. This is a make or break right here. If the movie industry does not want to have a complete loss of what's happening here, and all of a sudden they go back and say, you know what, we're just going to watch streaming. We're going to watch Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus. We don't need movies anymore. We have movies over here, but we don't need the new movies that you have for us. We're not interested in them, right? That can happen too. Now, more. There's more in here talking about the practical aspects of the show, intimate in-person event, show elements live from the Dolby Theater in Hollywood. And they're talking about what they're doing for safety measures. That's fine. The ceremony will be utilizing both Union Station and the usual Dolby Theater. And additional show elements will be used in the theater, most likely mini performances such as Best Song nominees, but nothing has been specified out. And also there's a word about speeches, urging again to get personal and don't read off a list. And the Academy will host a 90-minute pre-show gathering in the courtyard for nominees and guests. Only nominees, guests, and Oscar presenters will be actually attending in person this year. So there we go. Telling you, it's interesting where the bloated, high-end movie business, Hollywood, is now on it's on its back step. It's on its back foot. They're in a spot right now where they really need to show things up because that's what they need to have happen. And who knows when they're going to be able to do that. But again, they've lost a year of a significant movie revenue. When I looked at some of the movie numbers that have happened so far for certain movies, I saw Wonder Woman 1984 has only pulled $400 million. COVID, $400 million. Yes. When that movie could have built, probably banked out $1 billion, right? And then you have Tenet, which only pulled, I think, what was it, 400,000 as well. Not much compared to what it could have been. Like Tenet could have been over $500 million easily. They only got $357 million. They only got $57 million domestic. That could have easily been $250, $300 domestic. And even with the worldwide, they could have definitely pulled off, at least $500 million. That's what that movie should have made. And it's unfortunate that John David Washington and Robert Pattinson on the team there did not get that kind of accolade and did not get that kind of cash flow coming in for that movie. It wasn't that bad. I really don't think it was. And Wonder Woman 1984, it's okay. But again, the Wonder Woman 1984 experiment, you have to think about the fact that they did get more subscribers to HBO Max to continue that going forward. So that is a bit of a risk. But again, they got some kind of pain. But again, the kind of money they probably put into it and getting back probably didn't. These movies probably didn't go ahead and break even. Or not going to make a significant profit. But then they can't hold on to these movies and just bag them because they have no choice. They had to put them out somehow. So part of that does make sense to me. So again, that's what they're talking about there. And the Oscars are in a spot. And also an interesting thing when you come to Oscars is who got nominated. The most nominations came from Netflix. The constant issue we talk about with the Oscars now is they're also worried about the fact that Netflix gets all the awards. There's a lot of contention about the fact that the movies that are exhibited on movie screens should be the ones that are prominently put into the categories and the ones that get the chance to be nominated because they've gone through the proper movie process, if you will, instead of this Netflix digital thing that some of these, especially these, probably the producers, directors, and others, and the actors and actresses, they don't even understand what's going on. They don't understand it. No matter what, they're working behind cameras and grips and gaffs and working normal crews and doing production sets like they normally do. But they probably feel demeaned when they see their content being put onto streaming. You can watch it on your phone, on your tablet. You can stream it on your TV. You're not watching it on a movie screen and you're not watching on your television through some kind of thing where there's an extra premium payment, like a DVD or a Blu-ray, right? You got that going for you. So there's probably some backlash about this. Continued in the same vein. But again, Netflix, most nominations with 35. Best Picture nominees are The Father, Judas the Black Messiah, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Which, again, you have to go looking around to find those movies. They're not that easy to find. That's what it comes down to. You couldn't watch them during that 4-year consideration period at the end of the year. I couldn't find them. It's a lot to take in. It's concerning to that group. And I'm sure they're probably very, very nervous of what's going to happen next. That's how they feel. Now, with that said, I want to move along and talk about music. But I want to go into radio first. Only because, well, music did bring a lot of interest going on. And here's what I got to say about this. So the radio industry, or the music industry, excuse me, the music industry is significantly putting a lot of music out and has not stopped since the pandemic. Okay. Unlike movies, which they couldn't be able to publish or release. Again, music can still be consumed because it all goes to streaming. Not so much about sales, not even so much about downloads. So you have that going for you. And so when artists come back out and put out music and instantly hit the top of the charts because of the way the algorithm, the way the methodology, the calculations, the aggregation of the Billboard charts and the charts around the world and how they determine who gets to be on the top of the charts, it's a very interesting aspect, right? So at the moment, if I look at the Billboard Hot 100, and I look as for that matter, if I go and look at the chart for Spotify, for global, right? You can look at everything that's going on right now. It's very interesting on how the charts are and how out of touch, once again, American radio is, corporate radio. But again, there's something interesting that I have mentioned already on the program a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to go and talk more about it because there's more significant information about it. Here's what we got. So at the moment, on this program, I have talked about the song Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo as a test subject to prove my point about something that I actually thought about in the last week or so. And this is the best analogy I have for how radio treats music and treats listeners. Terrestrial corporate radio, when you look at streaming through Pandora or Apple or Spotify or what have you, and the streaming of radio through Apple or TuneIn or iHeartRadio, right? iHeartRadio, not even so much. More TuneIn, more, others. And there's the other ones underneath there, corporateradio.com and Global Player. There's also as well. There's a different story about it. But there's a lot of streaming stations putting out music. If you get a chance, Radio Garden has a great app. It's really, really cool. You can actually look at all these different stations from around the world, and they're dots on the globe. You can actually go ahead and scroll the globe and hit a dot, and you'll listen to a station, or you can find a group of stations in that particular area. And just pick a country and just listen to what they have going on live as it happens. And quite a bit of content is actually live, which is amazing. Not America, not so much, especially not late at night. So Olivia Rodrigo right now, I think this is for the second week on the media-based top 40 charts, which is more or less the conduit to the corporate-owned radio stations that program Top 40 Radio, or CHR. She is still the number one song in the country. Now, this is after she spent 8 weeks at number one. Okay? And so her song right now is number one. Therefore I Am Billie Eilish, number 2. 3435, Ariana Grande, number 3. Rit Momney, Put Your Records On, 4. Ariana Grande, positions 5. There you go. When I look at the Billboard Hot 100 this week, it's completely changed. Drake, for the first time ever, the first time an artist has able to debut 3 songs, 1, 2, and 3 on the chart. So he put out an EP called Scary Hours, and the 3 songs he put out all charted. Lemon Pepper Freestyle featuring Rick Ross, number 3. Wants and Needs featuring Little Baby, number 2. And his own standalone, What's Next, number 1. All dethroning Olivia Rodrigo's Driver's License after 8 weeks. But again, great run for that song. It's currently number 5. And then the song that could have been number 1 if not for Drake is Silk Sonic, which is comprised of Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak, The Leave the Door Open, a tribute basically to the sound of 70s style soul, the Delphonics, Stylistics, the Moments. Really good stuff. Just a classic sound, lush, and just had that real classic soul beat. A really good song. I can listen to it over and over. It's very good. And that's what you got in your top 5. That's the pulse of music right now across several genres. So again, You have Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license that has now moved down after a long run. Drake comes in, Silk Sonic comes in. That's what people are listening to right now. In their cars, on their phones, their tablets, on their whatever devices, their smart speakers, they're listening to that. Meanwhile, what are they doing right now on the chart? And there's the thing for Spotify in the same vein here. Let's go and look at that. At the moment, what's interesting is this. So if you look at the weekly chart right now for Spotify, they have not put out the chart for March 18th yet. I don't have that yet. But as of this chart, it was only a little bit after where Drake and What's Next was already coming up at number 2 and eventually is going to overtake coming up. And then Leave the Door Open was number 5. And Wants and Needs was number 6. And Lemon Pepper Freestyle was 17. And it will be all the way up there as well. Save Your Tears over the Weekend. You have Astronaut on the Ocean by Mass Wolf. Certain songs that are building themselves up, and they are viral. They're the songs that people are talking about right now. That's the pulse of music today. What does Media Base have? No. Of course not. Where are they at right now? Well, I want to go and look at where I normally always do. You know where I go. I want to talk about the antithesis. What always bothers me so much about this, everything that's going on with music and how they put out music, the America Top 40 Countdown, which obviously is complete crap. It just is. So at the moment, they did break out songs. They have Citizen Good Days, which, how many weeks has it been on Billboard? I don't even know, but actually it's been on 11 weeks. Just now we're going to break it out. So the song, for whatever reason, they just don't want to give it any kind of point at all. Leave the Door Open does get added as a breakout song this week. Interesting. But that's because it's Bruno Mars. If it's not for him, that will be a different story. And by the way, Drake, nowhere to be found on the American Top 40. That's, there's an agenda. The fact of the matter is that, I was trying to say this before, I'm going to make a point now, that with radio, meanwhile, while Spotify, Pandora, Apple, they're like designer boutiques, radio is a flea market. They're the second hand. They're secondary. They don't care. They're not worried about what's in style. They're worried about something that was in style. So they can feel like, oh, well, we got this. It's like, certain brands that you see that you'll see it in like one store and they were really popular and trendy for like about a minute. And all of a sudden they go to another store and it's like, oh, this is not so good. I remember when Ocean's Pacific was like a really popular brand back in the 80s. And you saw it at Kmart. Oh, no, I'm not wearing OP. Sorry. Joe Boxer. Remember when Joe Boxer was a big deal? And then that also went down. What about And Ones? Remember And Ones? Remember those shoes? All of a sudden, out of style. Oh, it's like in some secondary market. It's on flea markets. That's where they are. That's what radio is. It's what it's become. They don't care about the music. They don't care about their personalities. They don't care about anything. They're just milking what they have left to make money. Now, that's for the new chart coming up on the 21st. But they have not announced who they're going to have. We don't know the list yet. But we can go back, and I can take a look at what they have so far in terms of who was on the chart last week. And even when they put that in, it's still going to be far behind. We already know that. The March 13th chart. Your top 5. Ariana Grande, 34-35. 3 weeks at number 1. Chris Brown, Young Thug, Go Crazy's number 2. And that song, how far back is that going? Okay. Well, Go Crazy's still on the chart, if I'm correct. Yes. 44 weeks. 44 weeks on, and now this song has been on there for, it's been on there for 26. Okay. Yeah, 26 weeks on, but still taking forever to get to the top of the chart like that. And that's only because of radio. Because when you look at what the way the things are set up, Billboard still charts for whatever reason. They go ahead and chart. The music's still so high. I don't understand why they do that. It still doesn't make sense to me. Now, there's one person on Twitter that I really do enjoy that puts out quite a bit of information. There's on Twitter somebody called Top of the Charts. And they always put out what the current information is about a number of things. And I'll look on there and they'll show, oh, look, here's what's going on with the charts, and here's some information on here. And it's actually good stuff. So there's midweek predictions right now that have already come out about what songs will be at the top of the charts coming up this coming week, for the week ending March 27th. But again, if you look at how things are being put up, certain songs will get help because of radio, and radio should not be where it's supposed to be. All right? So, for instance, the current prediction of the midweek charts is that Leave the Door Open will then become number one. And that's because even though the streaming has done very well, their deal is that they're going to be pulling up more of airplay because the song went to radio automatically. And that's because, you know, the label and all these other things, they're also just saying, oh, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and put the song out because that's an artist we care about. Because they've put out hits, they're bona fide, they're corporate. And that's nothing against Bruno Mars. It's just the perception of the artist. Like, oh, God forbid we have any songs that, you know, if we put a song that might be a dud, they're afraid of that. And they only want bona fide hits. And when they play those bona fide hits, they're going to just be the conduit just to go ahead and say, okay, well, if a song does very well, then we're going to have a song like Go Crazy, which was already given its run virally. People are not necessarily listening to that song so much now, but they're putting it up there because it's like, well, what else is there to do? We're going to just continue to go ahead and play it. But the streaming isn't that high. People are not streaming it as much, not even close, because that's the pulse. Radio doesn't care about the pulse. Driver's License will then be number 2. It'll come back up into its spot originally, and Up will be number 3. And What's Next will be number 4. Blinding Lights will be number 5. And the rest of the top 10 will be Blinding Lights 5, Save Your Tears 6, Mood 7, Levitating 8, 3435 9, Wants and Needs 10. That's where they look at things right now. So Drake will then drop off significantly on his part on the chart because they're not playing his songs. Why are they not putting him on the radio? He's one of the most popular artists we have in this generation. Why is he being held back? Doesn't make sense, does it? But again, it's because for whatever reason, there is a favoritism. There's a discrimination. Remember, I've said that before. Discrimination among radio when it comes to who they put on and they decide to go ahead and put up. And that's a problem. You know what part of it is? It is part of a discrimination about how there are certain artists that are radio friendly, right? If certain artists that are just very vulgar, or they just have a certain thing about them, with just the portrayal, their whatever their position is, whatever the kind of a personality, whatever that might be, some kind of a aura about the artist, that if they're not known, if they're not anybody, you just can't take a shot at a record. You can't let the people decide who the songs are, who the listeners are going to listen to. That's the problem. Again, that goes back to my original point about the Grammys, the Golden Globes. When you're doing this established media where the people have no input, then that's where the ultimate loss is. Yep. That's where I'm coming from with all that. That's what's got to be understood. So that's my point about that. Again, radio just continues to be that. It doesn't help at all. It's just crap overall. Now, in the radio, one thing that might be interesting, and this is a very important point that I think people should actually keep an eye on. Global Media, which recently actually just increased the size of their stake of the company to 9.99%, as opposed to what they had, they're looking to go ahead and increase their ownership stake. So they had a petition with the SEC to increase its ownership stake. They've now added a counterfiling as iHeart seeks to limit the size. Well, actually, no. What happened was iHeart was looking to go ahead and allow 10% of their company to be picked up. But Global wanted to try to get 49.9%. That's what they wanted. So basically, Global wants to go and be the majority partner. They want to have voting rights. They want to be able to go and take the station over, take the company over. That would be great. In a reply to Global's original request for the FCC, iHeartMedia writes they first became aware of Global's 8.7% purchase of the company through Global's SEC filing, later confirmed by their attorney, or an FCC attorney. iHeart states they support Global's investment. Again, they'll take an investment of 10%, but again, the shareholders want to be able to go ahead and hold on to the crap way it's being run. Meanwhile, if Global took over, they would do a better job of programming. So why is there a block right here? Like if Global's going to go ahead and come in, they're going to invest significantly up to 50%, right? Why is it Liberty Media that originally, Liberty Media they were okay with, right? So what's wrong with Global coming in and buying out the station? What was wrong with that? You know, it doesn't understand. It doesn't make sense, does it? In response to Global Media and Entertainment re-emphasized their FCC counsel to iHeart, they intended to cooperate and work with iHeart to secure the approvals requested. Global Media President Ashley Tabor King told the same to iHeart CEO Bob Pittman and CFO Rich Bresler, acknowledging the shareholder rights plan. Global states it does allow for larger investments beyond 10% because the board of directors can approve it. They also state that the counter-petition by iHeart did not attempt to explain the basis for iHeart's unilateral decision to limit the advance approval, nor reference the original request to seek advance approval to the almost 50% stake. So now, Global states that the pre-approval now saves the SEC time and resources by not having to file a new request for approval every time they seek to increase their investment. So yeah. Now, Global Media is the largest commercial radio operator in the United Kingdom. They include brands that include Capital, Heart, LBC, Classic FM, Smooth Radio, and Radio X. So they have very well done. Listen, I'm listening to Capital now that I can listen to them pretty cleanly on the Radio Garden app. And let me tell you, compared to the BBC, they play the songs that are current. They do their own thing when it comes to their own chart. They do their own thing when it comes to their own programming. And they are commercial-led. They are, again, the way they do it, it's a good format. They even have a newscast. They do it very much where the BBC does the same thing. And I would love to see where Global came in and brought that same kind of format. Listen, if you can't do it right individually, then do something on the national sense and put these stations up and syndicate them. Franchise them, if you will. If that works better, good. At least you have consistency and you have good local programming that you could just embed instead of trying to create individual stations. Okay? So you can't program locally. And if you can't hold on to these stations to program locally, then sell them off. Right? That would be a good direction. And that would be fine for radio if they did that. Because then you could actually have national programming. You could have real artists coming on board. You could have good talent because Global does have good talent. They know how to program. They know how to produce good content. They know how to produce radio. They're good. They know what they're doing. So they could come in and actually help in the States. Again, they want to go and branch out, make their way into domestically into the U.S. and do something with that. So why not? Why shouldn't they? I hope they get a chance to do that. So that's what's going on with radio there in that respect with iHeartRadio. A couple of things about radio I want to talk about, and then we'll go into music. A story that came in from Radio TV Business Report about a year to continued challenges for radio and TV. And political revenue helped radio and television be able to monetize. But now that those dollars are in the past, analyst for Kagan called Justin Nielsen. He says that this is a transitional year ahead. So that investors and C-suite leaders should keep their seatbelts fastened, keep expenses under control while cash reserves are tight and locked. They're worried about trying to get some stimulus money to help bail them out. Much as the movie theaters try to get bailed out, other things like that. And we also talk about television. I don't want to talk too much about, but again, in radio, iHeartMedia and Cumulus Media might look to trim their portfolios or swap out of underperforming markets. So again, sell some stations off. Because Nielsen says here, quote, there could be additional debt for equity swaps and distressed sales among over-leveraged station owners if radio revenues continue to decline sharply in 2021. And what are they doing to stop it? Nothing. So that's why they need to go and do something. Now, in the Kagan 2021 Outlook, they talk about opportunities abound for local radio and TV. Local. So in the same way we talk about content creators doing stuff on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatnot, social media influencers, radio is still a forum which is almost like a Twitch, almost like a Clubhouse, an old version of it. Well, people can still go ahead and use a radio or even use a streaming app to go ahead and listen to a radio station, and they can still consume content, something local, which is something more than that you can't get. Getting local content, that's something you can't get necessarily from Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. Not necessarily. Unless you're following somebody that does offer some kind of a local feel. So, this Kagan report actually says, quote, there are signs that radio revenue is stabilizing with digital initiatives benefiting the bottom line. Radio stations' podcasting initiatives could spark new revenue streams. But again, radio trying to go and come into a market that they really were not part of. This is not podcast birthright, not what or radio's birthright, Bob Pittman. And there's been a saturation of podcasting. Like, how much money is out there to make on advertising for that? Now, we have heard that podcast ad revenue was going to reach $1 billion. And it's all these big shows are going to have content. And again, iHeart can go and try to get certain commercial advertising revenue because they'll have their big ad rep firm representing podcasts of usually rehashed content of their own, or they have some kind of series they brought on board and they just have a way to go and put it out. And again, like radio, they just put some kind of metrics. They'll say, oh, we're the biggest platform, whatever, things like that. So mostly about advertising they're talking about here in the first place. So here's another thing that's coming up when it comes to radio and TV. It's the regulation in the areas about where radio and TV can be owned. One of the wild cards in the coming months is what the new Democrat-controlled FCC will do when it comes to radio and local TV. Kagan notes that a proposal floated by the National Association of Broadcasters to relax some ownership rules, I've talked about that, including allowing up to 8 FMs in the top 75 markets with no AM cap and no cap at all outside the top 75 markets, did not get far when Ajit Pai led the FCC. But now with the new administration, Kagan believes the rules are less likely to change. That could have an impact on the deal market. The COVID-19 pandemic caused the broadcast deal market to plummet to only just a little over $1 billion worth of transactions, down 87% from the previous year, the lowest since 2010. So Kagan analysts think that major operators like iHeartMedia and Cumulus Radio will look to trim portfolios. And even so, without deregulation, Kagan expects more action in television mergers and acquisitions as consolidation continues. So again, radio and TV giving you local content, you can't really rely on because, again, they're just getting downsized, they're getting deregulated, and you're just getting more crap on there than something that you actually care about. Or having a voice in the community. You don't have that on these stations. So why do you think people go to social media? Because they have a voice there. And the places that used to offer a voice or a place to have a voice, those are gone. Radio and TV are not allowing that. Local owned stations, mostly radio, if they're doing local, you might have a place to get something voiced. And you might be able to go and do something there. And there could be diversity, equity, and inclusion across all these stations. And that's the easiest place to do it outside of social media. If you could let terrestrial radio be allowed to do this, this would actually help a lot of people. But they don't. Because that is a great place to get the word out. And then not just that, all these stations are streaming. So they just have a flag they can put down. They have a place and they have a studio. And they can own it. And they can have their spot. And can do audio and video content and all of that. Then they will have a place to go. Yep. That's the idea. A couple more things I want to talk about when it comes to music before we're going to wrap things up. All right, interesting story about Spotify because it comes down to musicians worrying about the kind of money they're making when they know they don't have live events yet. There's some live events that are starting to come out now. There's a talk about some of that coming forward. And obviously, the government's trying to say that things could try to open back up to some kind of normalization by as early as July. There's one story that came up that I thought was very interesting that I want to go and talk about. Big music needs to be broken up to save the industry. So let's talk about that real quick. And then I'll get into Spotify. Wired.com, and Ron Knox writes about this. He says, a year without live music has been a disaster. So has corporate power in streaming, recording, and ticketing. Antitrust may be the only solution. It's one of those stories. By taking away live music for what will likely be 18 months or more, COVID has ended the revenue stream that animated an entire music ecosystem. Particularly true for independent artists with fewer means of making a living in today's industry. Musicians lost 2/3 of their typical income in 2020. Live music revenue down 85%. Passed in December to Save Your Stages bill, part of the second round of pandemic relief, has offered a lifeline, but even after it's again safe to see a live gig, the underlying driver of the music industry's deep inequity will persist. Corporate concentration, the rise of streaming music platforms, has shifted power to tech giants into a conglomerate that, through a staggering failures of U.S. monopoly regulation, has come to dominate terrestrial and satellite radio, concert promotion, ticketing, artist management, and venue ownership, essentially every revenue-generating slice of the industry. Why do you think I brought up radio at this point? Because look at where we are. 3 major record labels produce 2/3 of all the music consumed in America. The most powerful buyer of music and talent, they use that power to prioritize a handful of mega stars and pop hits. Pitch music into massive radio conglomerates and streaming platforms that control how music is consumed. They collect an ever-growing share of industry revenue. Concerts, a crucial space where independent venues and artists have largely sidestepped corporate gatekeepers, are increasingly threatened by COVID shutdowns, and the prospect that Live Nation and other Wall Street-backed giants will either buy them or put them out of business. The broader middle class of independent artists, record labels, venues, and other small businesses must now rely on and increasingly pay monopolists for access to bands or fans. For some, the pandemic made a difficult situation impossible. One more thing I want to bring up in here, because I think he really nailed it on the head here, Ron Knox. Decades of bad policy got us here. Amen. Dangerous corporate mergers went unchecked. Bad conduct unpunished. But now sweeping changes to the way we police corporate power appear to be on the way. New legislation proposed in the Senate, along with the House committee, recommended legal changes after a comprehensive look at monopoly power among Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, and are aimed at reining in unchecked corporate power. If enacted and successful, the proposed changes would rebalance the music industry away from corporate bigness and towards music's vibrant, crucial middle class. Good. Now, let's talk about the kind of music, what can be done in the meantime. The money that can be made. We're going to talk about the money being made and what Spotify is trying to do in terms of an example of streaming music and musicians trying to make money. Let's see what they're able to get. There was a question polled and Music Business Worldwide put up and said, how many artists are generating $50,000 a year on Spotify? The answer, over 13,000. Yep. And Spotify is trying to answer that whole issue about who's making what. They now have a new website called Loud and Clear, providing a plethora of information for artists and their representatives looking for solid facts about the money Spotify distributes to musicians and the music industry. One section tells about the number of artists who have generated over $50,000 in payouts annually since 2017. And that in 2020, some 13,400 acts generated total payments in excess, and 13,400 is nearly double the amount of artists who generated over $50,000 in payments from Spotify in 2017. Now, one thing they mentioned in the article here that's important to note is that Spotify is home to around 1/3 of all paid music streaming subscriptions sold globally, which suggests that artists earning a certain amount on Spotify could double or even triple the figure when their income from all streaming platforms are taken into account. There you go. Again, that sounds like a small number of who's making money off of there right now. But what are you going to do? But they are showing consistently an increase amount of artists that are coming on and being added onto the platform, and then the money they're making themselves all together. And that's where we are with everything. So again, it's an ongoing subject I got to talk about. Where when I originally called this show Creative versus Corporate, it is the same fight we're having. And for content creators out there, my reason for talking about all this is because all of you need to go and realize what's happening in front of us. You're seeing in front of us all this back and forth fighting, the digital disruption changing everything. It's for the benefit of, again, what they said, the middle class, the everyday public, the people that want to have a chance to go ahead and put out a podcast, to put out a record, or to put out a video that might become something more, or, response video, whatever it might be. The opportunities to have a little bit of fame, a little bit of fortune. People want that. Their own personal micro celebrity. They don't need to go and be propped up by Hollywood or some big major media conglomerate, some corporate entity that's out there. It's fun. It's been great for the last 25 years that the internet has allowed people to go and become semi-famous or able to do something that they could do where they can also have that limelight, or be able to do something where they can actually produce content that people can get to a mass audience or therefore broadcast to. And that's what the whole story is about. And that's what's important. So more than anything else, I think it's a matter of letting people understand that all this is a wonderful thing. I mean, I want to not be completely critical. I also want to be constructive and say, listen, there are things that can be done now to get ourselves to a spot where we're not worried so much about that there's no room or something's always going to happen that's going to shut down opportunities for all content creators out there, all of you broadcasters out there. Honestly, I try to think about the fact that I don't know where I would be if I didn't have podcasting and being into this business almost 16 years now. Because radio, again, all that's happened with digital, when it comes to streaming media, streaming music, streaming movies, streaming TV, streaming radio, podcasts, and the music streaming. All of it. It's a reaction. It's not just technology because we have new technology. The technology is being done because it's a reaction to what people are not happy about. We're not happy about commercials. We're not happy about content being thrown down our throats. We're not happy about content that is rehashed or retooled and revived. We don't want any of that. We like new content. We like to appreciate our previous content. So instead of the technology being enhanced for better quality, for the most part, we're not getting so much of that. We're getting new content. And that's where the fun is. I mean, that's where we are. And so I can appreciate all that, and that's where we are right now. And to see the downfall, the crumbling of this corporate established entertainment and media falling apart, it is something, it's a delight to behold. It's unfortunate because there are some good people out there and all these businesses that, I feel bad for. Hell, I'll talk to some of those people here on the program. But again, this is where corporate thinking, corporate works for certain things. For media, we're learning it's not working so much. Again, when you put a corporate system in place without anybody that could decentralize and not be a part of the whole dynamic, and they have somebody that has real ingenuity, realness at the top, that's able to go and manage day to day, that's not worried about all these underlying factors of diversity, equity, inclusion, or social and cultural causes, or political correctness, all of that. We noticed that all these companies were run different, and people had a passion for what they were doing. Well, what's happening now? Right? That's where I'm coming from. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for listening to the program as always. Of course, subscribe to it. Well, no, don't subscribe. I forgot. Apple Podcasts. They say now, subscribe sounds like you're buying into a paywall. Follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, everywhere else. that you find the show. And of course, please follow the YouTube channel, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Remember, I have lots of interviews I put out actually every Wednesday, the next couple weeks right now. I am putting out full commercial-free interviews of interviews that I did with a number of people. Sophie Bowman, Lee Hunt, Jaime Rodriguez, and others. We're putting them out. I have been putting all those interviews out. So besides what I have up there on the normal, on the page of all the episodes you can find on the Broadcasters Podcast and Creative Cot Corporate, which was the original name of this show, you can find it all there on the YouTube channel. And you can find, because the Creative Cot Corporate one, the first, 70 some odd shows that I did I forget how many that I did. But the Creative Not Corporate series, originally what I had, that was the first 38 episodes. That's right. First 38 episodes going back to 2019. I did those, and, the other episodes, you can find, of course, right here. But the beginning of the series started as Creative Not Corporate, and you can find all those episodes there on the YouTube channel because I posted them there. And so much more. So we're going to leave it there. Thanks again for listening to the program. As always, remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.